Well folks, it has been a solid 10 months since you saw Grace in the shed last, because in its spot previously was a Morris Minor. So welcome back to the channel. On this episode, we are going to be installing a set of upgraded Homage Stedi headlights to Grace. All right folks, so welcome back to another episode of Tomo's Tune-Ups. So this episode, like I said, we are going to be installing a set of Homage 7-inch Stedi headlights into Grace. Now, you're probably wondering, why am I installing another set of headlights to Grace when you've already seen previously above me an episode in which we did some upgrades? Well, I figured, you know what, it's time to upgrade from a cheaper headlight conversion kit to something a little bit more fancy. So there were a couple of different types of Stedi ones that I could choose from, but the Homage, I believe, is probably one of the better ones to suit a classic Mini. So these are a full LED replacement and are both low and high beam. So let's jump straight into it and get these headlights in and see how much better they look. So sorry about that, I just had the tow truck come and pick up the Morris Minor that's been sitting in my shed for the last 10 months. So if you haven't already, make sure to check it out in the description above of all the videos I've done on it last year. So let's get straight into this build. Essentially what we're going to be doing with Grace, like I just said, is replacing the headlights. Now the headlights aren't overly bad on this, and I was given them by a mate, Kyle, who owns Iggs, the classic Mini Ute, which you guys have just seen in a previous episode. So they're not overly bad, but I just thought, you know what, let's just upgrade them. Let's just get something a little bit better quality. And you know, there's nothing wrong with these. They're pretty good, but I just wanted something a little bit more classy and up to date. So let's start ripping off the front grille and get the old ones out and see how much better these make it. All right, so like you've seen on previous episodes, this is a pretty straightforward removal process. Essentially, I'm just going to be removing the Rolston Classic sign that I got when I did the Rolston Classic late last year. If you haven't already, check it out in my series that I've got listed above. Once you've removed that, we're then just going to go around and remove all the Phillips head screws around the outside. Now, one thing I did literally just notice is that it's flaked away here just on the corner, and it is starting to rust. I've got some touch-up paint. I'll probably just go and touch that up when we go to put it back together, just to save it rusting any further. Last thing we want is another Mini on the road that's falling to bits. So this is a pretty easy sort of removal process. I believe, from memory, you don't have to remove the entire grille. You can just remove both end sides, and then that should be enough, but I just like doing it because it's better access to be able to get to it. So this is an upgrade you can do yourself. The headlights are $200 each, so they are quite expensive, and I was sent these by one of my suppliers that I use for my work at Penrith City Tyres and Automotive, where we work and do all the four-wheel drive and accessory stuff. And the good thing about these is they run 7-inch headlights, and a lot of older cars and some specialty cars as well, obviously Classic Mini being one of them, they do run the same style light. So anything that you find, whether they're RGBs, whether they're something specific, you'll find that it's easily interchangeable as well. All right, so once we've got it off, we then need to remove the headlight. All right, so it is a pretty simple removal process. There is generally one, I think, from memory. I'll probably have to go back and rewatch my video on how to remove them, because it's been quite some time. There'll be a couple, yeah, that's right. So there's three, sorry. In my case, there's one at about the 6:30 position, there's one at about the 11:30 position, and then there's one at about the 2:30 position. Once you've removed all those, they should, being the operative word, be able to twist and undo, and then you can remove the headlight itself. So let's just see if it's going to be stupid and be able to remove, or if it's going to require a little bit more emphasis to be able to get them out. So it is just important to make sure that you don't remove any of the screws at the top or the bottom in terms of the small ones, only because they are the adjustment screws for the headlights. So if you're trying to do a headlight adjustment, they are the ones that you adjust, but are not the ones that you remove to be able to get the headlight in and out. So the top one will do up and down, so it'll raise or lower the beam. The one at the 9 o'clock position here will cause the light to come either in or out. So it's either going to face inwards or it's going to face outwards towards the road. So in this case, we're just going to be removing the one in the bottom corner, so at about the 4 o'clock position. And then to get it out, it should be pretty straightforward. They generally just kind of twist in a little bit, and then out she comes. Ah, that's right. I forget the amount of crap that was in the back of it here. That's right, I did have that RGB ring from memory that we could have used. So pretty straightforward H4 style connector. Remove that, put it off to the side. So there's your wiring harness, and there's a couple of securing clips. So make sure you don't lose those as well, along with the screws that probably just fell on the ground, which they did. All right, so next part is to grab your new headlights. So this has a low, high beam and a park light as well. So everything in there we need to be able to operate a set of headlights safely. So we do have a set of instructions and the user manual as well. It does come with some new arrivals that Stedi have got coming. There's some really cool stuff in there. I'm not going to go through it now because I'll probably sit here for about an hour and a half pondering about the amount of money I can spend with Stedi. Now, Stedi is a really good brand. They are known worldwide and is one of my preferred brands. Now, it's just like Snap-on or King Chrome, Blue Point, whatever it may be. They're not a brand that you have to buy. You may find that you may get the same sort of quality from something else, and that is completely fine. So don't ever let anyone tell you you have to buy this brand because they are simply the best. Some brands simply make better products. For instance, MED are one of my preferred engine building supply products that I like to use in comparison to just standard replacement. And that's got nothing to do with Minisport or anyone else that manufactures the parts, simply because MED have refined the specific parts that they make and have made them to suit the classic Mini, the Moke, the A-Series, whatever it may be, and have refined it. So anyone that works in an industry that does something in particular, like they're a specialist, for instance, a diesel specialist, a four-wheel drive specialist, a gearbox specialist, whatever it may be, those are the more preferred people that I generally tend to lean on in this sort of instance, that someone that specializes in that field has more of a knowledge and background on those particular products compared to someone who's, for instance, a light vehicle mechanic like myself. So these are the new headlights. How sick are they? So I'm going to leave the plastic on until we fit them, and then we can find that when we remove it, it's going to look at that a little bit better. Now, they do have internal LEDs, so they're just like a little strip on the inside of them. I'll see if I can get the camera up there a bit later and you can have a look. But they do look absolutely wicked, so I'm really keen to see how these things look internally. I've just got the standard H4 connector, so we just plug that straight in, and then I believe the little blue wire should be, fingers crossed, I think I'm right on this, that should be for the park light, so we'll wait and see if we can get that to work as well. All right, so before we go any further, I just want to check to make sure that this blue wire is for the park light. So what I'm going to do is essentially just plug it in. I'm then just going to run a wire, like another blue wire, I guess, from here to the power wire just up in here, and that should give us a pretty good indication as to whether it is going to be for the park light. All right, so this wire here, I did just check the instructions. It does say that it is for the driving lights or even just the park light as well. So you can just wire that up to a constant power source. So it really just depends what sort of setup you're running here as well. So if you have a switched ignition, you probably could just run that straight to it. Alternatively, you could just run it to the park light globe setup. So let's just connect that and see what it does. Okay, so I'm just going to connect it over here. And then I'm just going to run a dummy wire from the headlights wiring itself. So just wedge that in there. Doesn't have to be overly pretty because it's only just making contact with it, I guess. We'll turn the headlights on and then we can see what it's going to do. So ignition on, park lights. So park lights are on there. So as you can see, the park lights are on just down the bottom on the vehicle. And then if we just touch this to power, oh, which one's the power? I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, so you know what? It will probably, I don't think I've got it wired up to come on with those. So it's not an issue. I'll probably just need to run a separate wire from that as well to get the park lights to come on. So what I'll do is I'll just switch the headlights on. So that's low beam now. So as you can see, the headlight is on. And then if we just touch that around the outside, that should go to one of the park light assemblies. Not entirely sure what's going on there, but we could probably just tap that in to a wire to the park light circuit, and that'll give us a pretty good indication. But as you can see there, that's a low beam right there as well. And I can immediately see how much brighter that is sitting, even just holding it in there with, in comparison, should I say, sorry, to the old setup that's beside me. So I'm just going to put that in here, hopefully it doesn't fall. There we go. Just going to turn the high beam on. We'll just see how much of a difference this thing actually makes as well in terms of brightness. Okay. Yeah, sweet. So that's high beam there. That's low beam and high beam. Low beam, high beam. So I can clearly see as well in my toolbox, even though it is angled up to the sky and does look like it's looking towards the bloody possums in the tree, it is much better in terms of brightness. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it back to park lights. I'm going to connect my battery charger, and then we're going to get this park light circuit rigged up as well, so that way it'll probably work. Alright, so as most of you know, the charger for Grace is hidden just under the back subframe here, if I can find it. It's been a while since I've had to plug it in. So we just plug that in there. And we just turn the power on and give it a couple of seconds, and then it should just change from the changing modes through to normal, which it is, and then it will give a battery indicator as well. So it's on a fairly low charge. She hasn't been driven in quite some time, so she does need a bit of charge to be able to get some state of charge back in there so we can properly drive it. All right, so what I've just realized is this blue wire here, I've just run that directly to a power source just up in here. So I've just connected my test light just to have a bit of continuity. And as you can see there, the lights are on, the lights are off, on, off. So that's just the park light assembly just there. Essentially what I'm going to do is find the park light wire that's just down in there, and I'm just going to tap that wire directly into it. That way it'll always come on with the park lights. Now, as I said, I could just rig this up to an ignition source, which I might actually do depending on what's easier, whether I'm able to run this directly to the park lights or just have the daytime running lights on there all the time. All right, so what I've done is I've just grabbed a general male spade connector and just cut it down just so that way it would fit directly inside there. That will give me enough push to be able to connect it in there, and then we can attach this wire to it. Now, it does state that it does need to be blue, or it's generally blue for a daytime running light or a park light. So I'm just going to grab a bit of blue wire. We're going to attach it to the end of here. We're then going to run it down through there. I'm going to connect it to the circuit in which the thermo switch is connected. That's got constant power. Sorry, that's got ignition power, so that'll always turn on. Whenever the car's on, the park lights will always be on with the headlights. All right, yes, before anyone comments, my tool bench is quite messy, so I do apologize. So, essentially what we're going to be doing here is getting a set of wire strippers. We're going to strip that. We're going to give it a little twist. We're going to stick it in the end just like that. I generally push it down so it just makes an appearance at the end of the contact just here. We're then going to spend probably the next 20 minutes looking for this tool. Nope, it's right here, excellent. Here's one I prepared earlier. We're going to stick it in through here. We're just going to crush it so it makes contact. Fabulous, give it the tug test, that's all good. We're now going to get a little bit of heat shrink to go on there just to help protect the terminal. That way it's not going to cause any corrosion internally. Just going to grab, no, those are probably going to be too big. Grab these, let's give a little slice. That'll just slide directly over the end. This is a 4:1, I'm fairly certain, heat shrink, so it'll shrink down to 4 times the size of what it currently is. We're then going to grab our little butane torch, start it up. The good thing about heat shrink is it does not take long at all to be able to shrink. So there are different sizes, different colors available which you can buy. So it is just important to make sure that you use the right one. It's not so much important to use the right one, but just make sure you use the right size. Doesn't matter so much about the color, just depends on what you're doing and where the wiring is going to go. So don't touch that for a while because it is going to be hot. So that is pretty much the wiring which we're going to do. We're then going to run probably, I reckon, I don't know, let's just say about a foot, so about 30 centimeters worth. And then that'll run directly down to the switch in which we're going to run it, and then we're going to do the same from the other side. So this is going to have to join to the other wire coming from the opposite side, so the driver's side, all the way along to this side, and then connect that directly to the thermo switch. Now, one thing my wife always seems to tell me is that I've got too many damn lights. Why do you need so many lights? Why do you need to have 47 LEDs? Well, I'll tell you what, when you're trying to film stuff like this and it becomes super precarious because there's not enough light there, it pays off to have different lights in different areas to prevent shadows being cast. But, you know, when you're a YouTube star like me, lol, you realize pretty quickly that you do need some decent lighting. So, in my professional opinion, I would recommend buying as many different types of lights as you possibly can to be able to help assist what you're doing on a car. So it doesn't really matter that you're going to be, you know, just working at home by yourself. You may be a professional, you may be a plumber, whatever it is, buy yourself a couple of different lights and then use them for the dedicated purpose in which you need them. Now, a light does give off light. A torch gives off light. A candle gives off light. And that's all good and well. They all do the same thing, but they all serve a different purpose, different size torches, different size lights, depending on what you want to be doing. So I've just pulled that wire all the way up through here. I'm now just going to connect it to the back of here. We can then grab the headlight and refit it. All right, so next thing is going to be removing the plastic film. Oh, satisfying. Then we're going to be grabbing the locking ring that needs to go around the outside of it. The locking ring helps to keep it in its position. I really hope that's going to hold it there, which it should. And then you need to work out which way it goes. Again, so this is where I always seem to get it wrong. Essentially, you want to make sure that the curved sections are at the top, at the side, and then line them up. There we go. And then put the other screw in the opposite side to be able to pull it in. So let's grab a Phillips head, and down below my fingers, once I sit here and try and work out how to put it in backwards because I'm right-handed, I'm using my left hand at the moment. Screw it all the way in. Okay, so before we tighten that up, we just want to make sure that the headlight is nice and level and square. As long as it is, we don't want to be possum hunting at night all the time. We can then go and tighten it up. All right, so now what we need to do is it does have a little bit of shimmy either side. The last thing we want is this light to be fanging around and bouncing all over the place and turning upside down and blinding everyone. So we're going to grab our little headlight securing clips. They will sit directly in behind here. Up the top, we are then going to put in a screw for those in either one of the corners. You can do this, I think, from memory before you put it in, which is probably going to be a better option to do rather than trying to put it in later, because it can be quite difficult to do depending where you have to put them in, that is. I did just notice as well, a bit of the wiring had slipped out from the bottom. That's the last thing we want. A bit of wiring coming out from the bottom. All right, so what I'm actually going to do is just pull the headlight back out and then just attach those securing clips. It will make it a bit easier. All right, so I should also note that it does have these 3 tabs here, here, and here, and that's where those metal clips need to go. They do just recess directly on the back here. Grab your Phillips head, tighten up, and that's what pulls it in and just creates that clamping force to be able to secure the locking ring to the headlight. And that is, yes, much easier to do when it is outside the car. All right, so once the securing clips are back in, you can then refit the headlight. Make sure all the wiring gets tucked back inside there. All right, so just realign the headlight with the screws at the top, at the side. Yep, once you're happy with that, grab the longer screw for the bottom and then reinsert it down below to secure it in place. All right, there we are. Cool, she's in. Just make sure she's nice and level and square, which it appears to be. I can always loosen that ring off a little bit later and just twist it a little bit, but I'm pretty happy with where it's sitting right now. All right, so now we move on to the other side. Just do it the exact same way that you did the original side, and the assembly should come out fairly easily. So in this case, I'm just going to be pulling the entire light assembly out as one, disconnecting it. Once you disconnected it, we're then going to pull the ring off, swap the ring over, put the new one on, and then Bob's your auntie. We do need to remember though that we have to run a bit of wire between here. So what I'm going to do is just grab this. I'm going to run extra wire. That way I can hide it a little bit better. So the overall length is probably going to be a bit excessive, but I'll probably go to about here. That way it'll give me enough length to be able to hide it down underneath the grill, but then also route it up here. Because the wiring actually comes through the top of the bucket of the headlight, I need to route it down up here and then up and through. So it's not going to be too hard to do. And what we'll do first is just run that through there, just to make sure that we can get all that in check first. That way we don't forget to do it. And if we need any extra wire, we can certainly do it as well. All right, so I did put the park lights on just to get a bit of an idea as to where the park light circuit was, but because we're not going to be wiring it into the park light circuit, we're going to be doing it into a ignition switch circuit. It doesn't really matter so much that they're on, but also we do just have the parkers on and the vehicle batteries on charge as well. So just one thing to keep in mind, if you are going to be testing this sort of stuff, you want to make sure that you are applying constant power to it, especially if it's going to be draining the battery quite quickly. All right, so we'll do the same thing again. Strip the wire back. I'll show you guys on another episode on how to use wire cutters and strippers and stuff, how to solder, or as some of the Americans call it, solder, which there's no double D in solder, and considering it's spelt S-O-L-D-E-R-I-N-G, sorry to my American viewers out there watching. I know we all call things different, but yeah, just frustrates me. Anyway, that's for another story, but I'm not going to get into politics or all that. Now, it just goes to show you how far ahead I am with my episodes. Today, the Morris Minor finally went. So the Morris is something that has been sitting in my garage, like I said at the start of this episode, for the last 10 months. And I generally film several months in advance for a lot of my material. That way, during the Christmas break, I'm able to catch up and get on top of everything and know that where I'm going to be starting at in the new year, I'm already ahead. So here's a question for you. In the comment section below, what are your favorite things that I do to Minis? Is it doing the engine builds? Is it doing small stuff like this? Talks to people? Doing video chats? Is it doing car meets? What are your favorite things? Let me know in the section below. Look at this, fresh out of the box. Hasn't even been opened. I didn't want to open them until I knew that I was going to use them. And yes, I'm using a taco to open that, if you get my drift. If you know what that is, if you don't, let me know in the comment section below and I can explain to you what a taco is, what that little clip was anyway. All right, so same thing again. Open it up. Grab the headlight. Before we go any further, once again, we're just going to turn on the headlights, just make sure that they actually work. The last thing you want to be doing, and like I've said many times before, always check your work as you go. Put it together to a stage where you're able to test it. Otherwise, if you don't, you'll put everything back together, you go to start the car for the first time, you go to try the headlights, whatever the case may be, and you'll find, no bingo, they won't work. So, ignition is off at the moment. Park lights are on, low beam is on, excellent, that's working. And then we have high beam as well, which probably, oh yeah, that'll work. So that's high beam, low beam, high beam, low beam. Terrific, they all work. We'll switch those off now, let the battery charge up a bit more. And then we can go and connect all of these together. Don't forget to connect up the park light circuit or the DRLs. DRL actually spells, or stands for, should I say, driving lights. So for those of you out there who don't know, that's what it means. Once again, swap over the light assembly here as well, or sorry, should I say the ring. That'll just go around the outside. So Australia is generally quite hot, but the last couple of days have been absolutely blistering, and then today decides that we've got Melbourne weather. We've had bloody everything except snow and except a ginormous heat wave, but it's just one of those things in Australia that you just cannot pick it sometimes. Sometimes it's bloody blistering hot. You come down here and you think, wow, such a beautiful country. And you know what it is? It's a beautiful country and I love it. However, when the weatherman decides to say, hey, you are going to be in for a shit time, you generally are. It's either blistering hot or it's freezing. All right, so same thing again here. Just going to rotate those around, get them lined up, and definitely don't do what I almost did, which is drop the damn headlight. The last thing you want to be doing is dropping this thing and realizing that it's going to cost you thousands to replace it. Well, not really thousands, considering they were $200 each, but the last thing you want to be doing is dropping your brand new products that you've just spent all your hard-earned cash on. All right, tuck the wiring back in, reconnect at the top and at the sides, so where the adjustments are. We'll do a video as well on headlight adjustment down the track as well. I'll see if I can take the car into work one day and I'll show you guys how to do it with the proper alignment machine. Alternatively, we could probably do it in a car park somewhere or even just up against a brick wall. Okay, grab your screw, tighten it back up through there. Moment of truth, let's test them out and let's see how they look. All right, here we go. Parkers, low beam, high beam. So they do need some adjustment, I can see there. So the driver's side is actually gonna have to come up, which I might just quickly adjust now. Essentially what we wanna be doing here to get the adjustment right is to wind in the top screw, and that's gonna bring the headlight up. So because my toolbox has drawers, like every other toolbox does, I guess, it does have horizontal slats, so it gives me a pretty good indication as to where it sits as well. Another real easy way to do it is just to stand there and just get a bit of an idea where it sits on your legs, and then walk to the other side, do the same thing. That's not the correct way to do it, and I wouldn't recommend doing that just as your baseline, but you could also just use a bit of cardboard or something as well, stick it there. It generally needs to be about 1 meter away from the actual headlight itself to allow it to give you the correct reading. But as I said, I'll do that properly on another episode. We can now start the reassembly process, but before we do have to jump onto this wiring between the two headlights to make sure that we can have the DRLs working. So what I've done here, and I'll just grab the cameras. All right, so this blue wire here connects the two together. All I'm going to be doing is just cutting that and just wiring it to the ignition switch, which is directly located beside the engine. All right, so after a bit of dicking around, I did wire it up to the thermofan switch, but that has a constant power. So just like any modern day vehicle, you'll find that when you turn the car off, it does have a warning under the bonnet saying that radiator fans may start at any particular time. That's because they are run to a constant power circuit. That means that when you turn the car off, they can still operate. So that just enables a car to cool down to that next level. So essentially what I've done here is rigged it up to constant power as well, which then means that as soon as I plugged it straight in, no matter whether I had the ignition turned on or off, they would always turn on the park light. So it's obviously going to drain the battery. So what I've done is I've just wired it into the park light circuit. So I've just done a little bit of a MacGyver for now, just to make sure that what I've done is going to be confirmed. So let's switch the ignition on and let's see what it does when we turn the ignition on and turn the park lights on. So that is ignition on. We have park lights. Hey, there we go. We have low beam and we have high beam. Fabulous. So that goes through and concludes the episode. So that's how you go and fit a set of Stedi Homage lights to your classic Mini. So it is a fairly simple sort of thing. I'm just going to go now, like I said, and just tidy up all this wiring. I'll just show you guys what I've done. Essentially just down in here, I've just looped it back around. I'm just going to electrical tape that, and then electrical tape these connectors here as well. That's just for the circuit for the park lights as well. So it is a very straightforward and simple process to do. It is something you can do at home. I think the last time I did this was during COVID, and that was like 2 years ago. So it is a very straightforward process. Make sure that you use the locking rings. When you get it all set up, I will show you guys how to do a headlight adjustment as well. So maybe we'll go to a car park one day and I'll show you guys how to do that the easiest way possible. Other than that, you need to take it to a professional and they're going to use a particular tool to be able to align the headlight. So it is something that we offer at Penrith City Tyres Automotive. It is a service we can do for you. So long as it's a fairly straightforward car, it is fairly inexpensive to do. Some cars you do have to put into like a particular programming mode to be able to program the headlights to be able to adjust them. But yeah, easy, simple cars like the classic Mini, Moke, all those sort of things, they are pretty straightforward. Well, that's pretty much the episode, guys. I'm going to go for a drive, see what it's like at night. I may put it at the end of this video, and if I don't, I'll put in another one and I'll definitely report back. But it looks like it's going to be an awesome upgrade that I've done to the classic Mini. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you're enjoying the series. We got plenty more coming up this year, especially with a lot of things that are going on around me at the moment. So we will see you on another episode of Tomo's Tune-Ups.